We're here to mark a historic moment in the life of our country and our military. For nearly 9 years, our nation has been at war. We remember the early days, American troops breaking the back of a brutal dictator in less than a month. We remember the grind of the insurgency, the roadside bombs, the sniper fire, the suicide attack. All the fighting, and all the dying, all of it has led to this moment together. So I'm proud to finally say these two words: welcome home. Welcome home.
In case of people versus Ricardo Tapia.
First again in session. Mark Stillion. David Anthony Stroud.
Welcome home.
A bizarre shooting tonight here in Reseda. LAPD officers were called after people in apartments reported multiple gunshots. We had a man covered in blood ranting to officers as they brought him into custody. 2 people shot, one of them dead.
This case came to me in the middle of the night. The suspect was in custody. I was told that there was a weapon at the scene, and I was also given information that he was a veteran. He was a Marine Corps veteran.
I was lost in a combat mindset where I was back at war, thinking I need to protect my life and the lives around me. My fiance said that there was a loud bang that caused me to react, and I believe that we were under attack.
I knew that the moment he said this is war, I knew something tragic was going to happen.
911 emergency.
And I said, my fiance has PTSD. He thinks that we're at war, please send a unit. He found the gun and he went upstairs to where the noise came. And then he broke the door. And I just heard 5 gunshots. My heart just sank.
I wake up to see blood in my hands and then getting tased, lost consciousness. I was in the ambulance and then lost consciousness. And I was in the jail cell.
If there's some process that somebody undergoes when they're coming out of that PTSD state, I mean, we were telling him, you shot and killed one and critically wounded another. There was a blank stare. And it was like you were looking into the eyes and they were hollow. Just, I'd never seen anything like it.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to introduce Attorney at Law William Papiri.
The tragedy of December 20th, 2013 in Reseda that left one man dead and a woman seriously wounded could have been avoided.
I think it was important that the public be educated. I mean, the initial headline was that crazy combat veteran shoots his neighbor.
Once everybody has one of these blue packets, starting on the right-hand side, we have a series of photographs. The first one is a photograph of Ricardo Tapia when he served as an embassy guard.
You know, Rick Tapia had served our country. His record is a very distinguished one. In addition to his combat service, he had served in our diplomatic posts overseas. He had a top secret security clearance. He protected our diplomats.
The next photograph is of Ricardo Tapia inside of a mosque in Fallujah. Immediately in front of him, wearing the glasses, is David Agundes, Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps.
You know, we were there to make a difference, and we always believe in that. We sign up and we go to war, and we never realize like how these things are going to affect us in the long run. And obviously, it affected Rick pretty badly. Sometimes there's things that happen that make you unravel. And
I'll never forget the conversation I had with the young Marine who had served 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he said, "Well, sir, I'm willing to go get help, but I've killed more people than any serial killer I've ever heard of. And I don't know how they're going to make me normal again."
He's one of my brothers, and I'm sorry that this tragedy happened.
We have more than 20 veterans every day that commit suicide as a result of post-traumatic stress disorder. The reality is that these conditions do explain, oftentimes, the criminal conduct that occurs with military veterans.
It's all the events that he lived, being in battles, losing 23 of his friends in one night. Nobody's gonna be normal after that.
Regardless of the PTSD, is it going to affect in any way his charges of first-degree murder that he faces?
Well, we are returning to court the day after tomorrow.
Ricardo Tapia's wife, Elizabeth, contacted me. She knew of my work with military veterans. When I graduated college in 1971, military service was compulsory. The war in Vietnam was still going on, and I had a very high draft number. And I struggled with whether or not I would avoid military service.
Hello, Sean. It's Attorney Bill.
I did not, and I enlisted in the Marine Corps. My goal had been to complete my military service and return to school. I had an aspiration to pursue a career in the entertainment industry. I wanted to make movies. I wanted to make black and white film noir movies.
The reason that I went with Bill Peperian versus other lawyers is because he's military himself. He feels our pain, and he works with that. What I experienced with Rick, this was out of left field. He's never snapped in that sense. And you would think if he was a bad guy, I wouldn't even be thinking of a future with him. But he's not. He just needs help. And that's what my main concern is, that he gets the help that he deserves, especially after being in the military. I wouldn't want my fiance, my everything, to just give up on me because of a tragedy that happened that I couldn't control. Because I know in my heart that he didn't mean to do that.
Main City come to order. 40120 is again in session.
Well, my first concern was his current mental state,
The case of People versus Ricardo Tapia.
whether or not he was competent to stand trial.
Ricardo Tapia needs some treatment before this case goes forward at all.
Is Ricardo Tapia your name?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Your Honor, Mr. Tapia is a highly decorated Marine Corps combat veteran. He served 3 tours in Iraq. He's been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress with traumatic brain injury.
Second tour, I almost got blown up by an IED. I witnessed the death of one of my comrades, two of my comrades. Had to conduct dead checks with K-bar. What dead checks are is stabbing the enemy with the K-bar. And I made sure they died.
I'm convinced that my client at the present time is not able to, in a meaningful way, participate in his own defense. His thoughts are intruded by hallucinations of insurgents from Fallujah attempting to attack him, and that's the reason why I'm declaring the doubt.
Based upon what I've seen,
The Deputy District Attorney, Edward Nissen, was skeptical of the issues that were being presented by the case of Rick Tapia.
I'm not somebody who simply was looking at this as, well, he's a veteran, he served, therefore we should cut him a break.
the issue with regard to competency is whether it can meaningfully assist.
Right.
And I have not heard from
PTSD is the psychiatric illness du jour. It's something that a lot of times it is put out there by defense, whether it's because somebody's a veteran, it doesn't mitigate their conduct.
I started having nightmares. I was having flashbacks, which created a lot of anxiety. And I was always on guard, easily startled, thinking that somebody was out to harm me and my family. I stayed up, most of the night just to make sure that they were sleeping well. It's like I was on night watch.
They say if you got PTSD, that means you're weak and you can't hack a military lifestyle.
And so I didn't want to admit that I had PTSD until, unfortunately, the incident.
I think that his military background and the selflessness and the dedication that he's shown is wonderful, but that does not give him a pass for this behavior.
All right, I think I understand. All right, at this time, proceedings are suspended, and the defendant will be transferred to Department 95 for a hearing on mental competence. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I was born in Texas, and I grew up in El Paso, Texas for most of my life. I lived there until I was 21. Grew up with the older brother and the younger sister. I was a very active kid. I was very adventurous. I joined the Marines following the attack of 9/11. I wanted to go fight the war and prevent terrorists from coming to this country and prevent them coming over here and harming my family.
We both come from family backgrounds that our dad wasn't there, and we both agreed that children need to be with mom and dad or have a male role model at home. Do you think I would have brought another child into this world knowing that this was gonna happen? Probably not.
He got out of the military to have a family because we wanted that family atmosphere until they could recognize him and be like, okay, daddy's gonna go to work.
She was very supportive. She was very supportive of what was going on with me in the military. So those are a lot of good memories that I have.
He wasn't at war because now he would go to different embassies of the world and do security work. And then I said, well, I eventually want to have children, but I don't want a dad to be away.
Happiest moment of my life. My daughter being born. I remember cutting her umbilical cord, and I just became very protective of her and my family because it was a blessing to me. And excuse me, man.
Are you okay? Whoa, you're so dramatic. We planned our whole entire life together.
You made it. Give me 5.
We planned, okay, you get out of the military, We start our family, then you go back to work, and that's exactly what we did. Do you want to sing Baby Brother a song so you can go Mimi's?
Baby brother, me.
I mean, we had I would say, a great life.
This is what makes me like every day. I can't give up.
There are many in the criminal justice system who think that post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury is a crutch, that people use it as an excuse to cover up criminal behavior for which they should be held responsible. But slowly but surely we've been overcoming that. That's why we have things like the Veterans Court in Los Angeles that Judge Tynan presides over.
With the Veterans Court, we have an obligation to take care of the men and women that go out and fight our fight, to give them rehabilitation, treatment, and then get them back on their feet so they can go back into society and be good, productive citizens.
You've done very well, you really have.
We know from past generations of veterans that throwing a traumatized veteran in a cage doesn't solve the problem and very often exacerbates the problem, and they leave jail a greater threat to public safety than they went in.
You got a good attitude, you got a good presence.
We have veterans courts that handle felonies and handle misdemeanors. Now, there's certain crimes that would not be taken in a veterans court, like a murder, a rape, serious and violent felonies.
Anything else, Bill?
I have another matter on Your Honor's calendar, number 14, Mario Lee.
Yeah. Mr. Antonio, we've got anything going?
Veterans Court is basically designed to allow veterans who have been through some experience in their service to address that through treatment, to actually go into some kind of program and start to look at those issues and process them and create change in their lives.
Present with William Paparian, Ms. Hanson for the people.
Veterans Court is a post-conviction program on a felony.
And a new grant of probation is ordered. Were we on a 3-year grant, Ms. Hassett, or a 5-year grant?
But they have to comply with terms and conditions of the program, or else they can be violated on their probation and have their probation revoked.
He's placed on formal probation without formal supervision for 3 years.
We've had guys with some serious issues and horrible traumas. You need to treat this. And if you don't, the behavior's not going to change.
Anybody else ready?
May we call 24?
Okay. Mark Stillion. Mr. Stillion, good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor.
And people are represented by Ms. Hassett. Mr. Antonio, do we have a report on Mr. Stillion?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Going from a missionary to a Marine to a meth dealer is it's not like an overnight transformation, you know? I was born and raised in Sebring, Ohio, and I was really involved in my church, and felt the urge to travel abroad to, spread the word of God. So I went on my first mission trip when I was 14 years old to South America, and I went to 7 different countries before I graduated high school. It was a very eye-opening experience for me, and I think that had a lot to do with my decision to join the Marine Corps. Just wanting to give back more than anything. I graduated back in 2006, left for the boot camp 10 days later, and that's where I started, my training for the Marine Corps. So I deployed twice with the Marine Corps, both to Iraq. The first deployment was very intense. It was very, I was blown up a couple times. I hit a couple IEDs, a roadside bomb, basically. I don't really talk about much of it. I don't even like to think about it, let alone talk about it, really. I've experienced, firing a main gun round into a group of military-age males and destroying a target that way. Basically, I saw war. I saw war at the front line.
I do hereby publicly honor and commend Lance Corporal Mark Allen Stillion for his service to our nation in the United States Marine Corps.
After the Marine Corps, I took on contracting jobs with the Department of Defense, and I went the first time and I felt more comfortable in Iraq than I did back at home. I felt like I knew what to do there.
Look at this guy right here. See somebody like him when you grow up, okay? Amen.
I just felt more comfortable there. It was really weird. And so when I came back from Baghdad, I was training for about 3 or 4 months, and then I shipped off to Afghanistan in 2012. And I totally just lost my train of thought. Yeah, 2012. My PTSD, I have complex PTSD, so sometimes some things trigger me. I'm just constantly on alert, constantly being on edge. When I first got back from Afghanistan, I was dealing with the symptoms of PTSD, nightmares, flashbacks, and I started self-medicating with drugs. I started using methamphetamine. It allowed me to stay awake, and that's what I loved about it, because I hated going to bed, because every time I would go to sleep, I would wake up screaming, or I'd wake up with night terrors. And because of my PTSD, I made decisions that were with poor judgment, and I very quickly went from top to bottom, and I fell into a trap of selling drugs, and so I wound up being in Veterans Court for possession for sales, crystal methamphetamine, heroin, and cocaine. It's a very tough time getting back, getting everything back that I've lost over the past couple years.
It looks like you're doing very well, sir. A good chunk of the problem is under control. So congratulations on that. That's a huge step forward. Let's keep this thing going. Continue with your hard work. You're doing beautifully, and we'll see you then. Good luck, son. Your Honor.
They approved me to come into Veterans Court program, which thank God they did. They're willing to work with me and not against me. It's not like me against the court. It's the court is on my side.
I really believe that a judge in my position has got to worry less about the, quote, dignity of the court, unquote.
You will stop acting like a jerk and try and get something out of your program.
And be more concerned with the quality of the services that we can render to these defendants, because God knows they need it, and they don't get it.
You're dealing with people with very positive attributes that have a lot to offer society, and when they went in the military, had their life together and really were on top of things. And then they come home and now all of a sudden they have problems and they're not reliable and their integrity is suffering.
This generation now is the most deployed generation in our country's history. The more intense the combat exposure, the more repeated the combat exposure. The more likely that post-traumatic stress is going to manifest in aberrant behavior.
We have no idea what is coming. We know that there is a crime wave after every major conflict, going all the way back to the Civil War and the American Revolution. Criminality is just a part of war.
911 emergency.
I just had a girl run to my house, and she's nervous that somebody might have hurt another person.
Okay, what's your address?
It's on Santa Rosa Street. We're not exactly sure the number. And the guy came out, and he was covered in blood, and the other guy was on the ground.
Okay, slow down for me. So you said...
Most veterans come home, they're not debilitated by their experiences. But there is a significant percentage who come home with diagnosable post-traumatic stress. And A significant percentage of those are bringing their war home with them and acting out against their communities that they went over and risked their lives to protect.
Military veteran David Anthony Strouth is accused of stabbing his friend 49-year-old Bradley Garner to death. Garner died from several stab wounds to his chest and neck.
In multiple ways, this whole thing is trashed. Something I never foresaw happening. I mean, me and Brad were going to move in together. We connected on a brotherhood level, but we connected on that. And I thought of him as kind of like a mentor, as an older, this was my friend.
It was very clear to me when I met him he had PTSD. He was very jumpy, kind of like if you've ever dealt with an abused animal. I didn't know if he was still suicidal because he had taken fairly extreme measures to kill himself.
When police arrived, David Strouth was slashing himself on his wrists and on his neck, and he was asking them to put him out of his misery.
This is a job that you do because you fundamentally believe in, for me, the Constitution. I fundamentally believe in what our country stands for. Really hard with this client because I think these PTSD cases are just starting to come through now. There needs to be a change in how PTSD is shown in the court system, because right now what we're left with is, an NGI, and not guilty by reason of insanity, or self-defense. And Tony was not NGI, and so he was put in the system like anyone else. And I don't want him stuck with a potential life sentence.
What we first knew when the case came in was that he had murdered someone who was close to him. They got along well. They were planning to be roommates, and they were starting a band together. And it didn't make any sense why Mr. Strouth would kill Bradley Garner.
This is going to be a very simple case. And what this case is about, it's about how one particular person, David Anthony Strouth, responded to depression with violence. Mr. Strouth had an intent to kill. He had a pre-existing intent to kill that preceded the day of the actual killing. And what you'll hear through the evidence in this case,
The vast majority of veterans who come back, and including those who suffer from PTSD, I mean, we don't see them engaging in violent crimes like murder or attempted murder. So in this case, Mr. Strouth did have PTSD, and we weren't going to fight the PTSD, but just show that despite the fact he had PTSD, he had malice aforethought. He had the intent to kill.
on April the 24th of 2015, Bradley Garner is at his home in the city of Oceanside. And they're kind of hanging out at the house, Brad, and the defendant, David Anthony Strouth, or Tony as he's known to his friends. Mr. Strouth took his military weapon, this Operation Iraqi Freedom, K-bar knife, and plunged that blade into his friend. The evidence will show he took the knife and surprised and ambushed Bradley Garner. That wasn't just a murder. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a murder in the first degree.
The defense was a defense of self-defense, but they also presented evidence of PTSD. And what was not clear to us was how would they connect the two.
Tony suffers from PTSD. He served his country admirably, and during that time he was deployed twice to Iraq. That's Tony. And that when Tony was discharged from the Marine Corps after a decade, he was lost. He was trying to find out who he was. I don't believe that he cavalierly killed Mr. Garner. There's no history of violence, no history of assault in the military, in his personal life, so this is completely not within his character or his personality. But I was concerned that the PTSD would be presented to the jury by the prosecution as an excuse. And I was concerned because I had no story for why it happened. Juries don't like that. And then one day, he met Brad Gardner, and he and Brad hit it off. They were going to start a band. They were going to get a place together. So on the night in question, you have Tony and Brad in the garage together. Tony hears an unbelievably loud, banging, metallic sound. That's the sound of Brad jumping up and the metal chair that he's in flying back against the wall. And when Brad jumps up, Brad is holding in his hand a K-bar in a sheath. It is Tony's K-bar. Tony has been told, and he's operating under belief, that Brad is Special Forces Marine. The type of Special Forces that can kill in an instant, if need be. And in that split second, he had to defend himself. When you had the prosecution in this case making the argument that Tony was a homicidal killer, that he had I think it was a compulsion to kill was the phrase, I never thought that was viable. Based on what Tony was saying had happened, he was hypervigilant and hyper-aware, but he was actually attacked. His response might have been over the top because of the PTSD.
The question is, yeah, should murder by someone who suffers from PTSD be treated differently than someone who doesn't? And I think the answer is no.
David Anthony Strauss did the only thing he could, and you will find him not guilty. Thank you.
My son, he was the only child I had. I'd already lost the first one, so of course, you know, I wanted to always keep him forever and have nothing happen to him. He was a happy child, and he was well loved by all children. I mean, you could go to a birthday party, and children would argue over who's going to sit beside of him, who's going to stand beside of him for a picture and stuff like that.
You know, I think I had a pretty good childhood. I was an only child, so I was probably a bit spoiled.
His one cousin, he and Tony were always going to be world travelers. I mean, they would get all the encyclopedias out and always be studying. In respect, Tony kind of did end up being a world traveler by joining the Marines and serving.
You know, I never would have thought I would have joined the Marine Corps. But, you know, 9/11 happened. You know, our country had been attacked, and this was an honorable thing to do in this time. And being a part of the Marine Corps, you know, being a part of something really huge.
He was a good Marine. He believed in it. It was his mission, and he was proud of it, too.
You know, 10 years, the Marine Corps is my family, you know, and my mentors and everybody that you know, they were all Marines. And at the end of the day, the job, the mission, they required one another to find, kill, and possibly die together. I don't know that there's anything on this planet that can create such a solid bond.
To be honest, I really was hoping that he would have made a career of it and stayed in, but I mean, after the 2 deployments, it had looked like it had taken its toll on him, you know. When he said he was going to get out, I said, well, maybe that's for the best, because in 10 years you were in there, you aged 20.
She probably saw a lot of changes. You know, they say the person who goes to war is not the person who comes home.
I really thought someone was gonna step up, like step to the plate and say, he's one of us. Let me help in any way. And I just feel like every door got shut down. I called the VA and they couldn't do anything about it. I called the Marines, they couldn't do anything about it. Veterans Court wouldn't take my case because it's a violent crime.
Come to order, court is again in session.
The case of People versus Ricardo Tapia. The matter is here for preliminary hearing setting.
Once he came back from competency to stand trial, my view was to process it like it would a normal homicide. There's really no other option in a case like this.
I would call Detective Joel Price.
Understand that in a preliminary hearing, you're convincing a jury of one, the judge, that there's enough evidence to hold somebody over for trial. That's it.
Detective Price, showing you what's been marked as People 17. Do you recognize what's depicted in the photograph?
That's the interior of apartment number 214. It's taken from...
It was a mess. The apartment had been ransacked. There was a glass tabletop that had been shattered, and of course, the victim's body, and blood all over the place.
Detective, did you interview the defendant after his arrest?
I did.
And did he say to you that I acted to protect my family and keep them safe?
A number of times, yes, sir.
The second victim, the female victim, she'd been shot multiple times, and it was questionable whether or not she was going to survive her wounds.
Mrs. Nguyen, I want to go back to December of last year, 2013, December 20th. At some point that evening, did something out of the ordinary happen?
I heard a loud noise at the door, like somebody break down the doors. And I looked out and I saw he holding a gun.
What was the next thing that happened?
I felt he squeezed the trigger, that person.
Had you ever had any problems with the defendant before this day? Any kind of arguments?
Never. I usually commented on his wife is very kind and nice.
The first time that I saw the victims, my heart was just aching for the simple fact that one of my loved ones has hurt their loved ones. I just wanted to just hug her and kiss her and say, I'm so sorry this happened.
There had been a very harmonious relationship between Rick and the victims. They thought kindly of him. I thought that that was an important issue that had come out at the preliminary hearing. After you saw your husband fall to the floor, what was the next thing that happened?
So I heard my husband was moaning. So shot him. Like, you know, he heard my husband moaning, so he shot him again. And that time I thought my husband may be dead.
I had a hard time believing what was being said, and it was hard for me to accept because the way I was portrayed was this cold-blooded murderer, and that's not me. I know in my heart I'm not that way.
It's hard to talk to him about it because he's not comprehending what he did. Like, he doesn't get it. He doesn't get that, the fact that me and his daughter were there and we heard the gunshots. He doesn't get that.
Ms. Valdez, you know the defendant?
Yes, I do.
And you see your fiance?
Yes.
On December 20th of last year, did something happen that caused you to become concerned?
I would say the whole entire day, he wasn't being himself. Me and my daughter were watching TV. He was having like a very depressed day, and he was crying to me that he's tired of all the pain, not being able to sleep, being sensitive to light. Because of all the explosions, he would get migraines. He started hitting his head in this manner with both hands.
I was having those auditory hallucinations where at one point I heard the president say that we're gonna attack and I need to take action. You're gonna throw bombs through your window. My protective sense was kicking in and I was getting panicked and I tried to not believe it. And so I remember just going to the couch and laying down, and after that, I don't remember what happened.
And then the victim or the people upstairs dropped something heavy, loud rounds, and it just heard like, and he jumped out of the couch, and then he said, "This is how I knew the end of the world was gonna come. We're under attack. Please, you go take cover." And he kissed me and my daughter on the floor. He said, "You go take cover and get under my bed." And he went upstairs and I was telling 911, please to the unit. My fiance has PTSD and he thinks we're under attack. And then he said, oh my God, he's shooting. Prior to that, I had heard glass break and a big thump.
Then I run outside and I see him on the deck just screaming, this is war, you want a war, I'm gonna give you war. And that's when they tackle him down and everything.
Did Rick ever express to you that he was going to protect you and your daughter?
Yes, multiple times that day.
After the loud noise from the ceiling above, did he say that?
Yes.
This case was different than most. Here was a sympathetic suspect. I'm usually not thinking about the suspect. I'm usually thinking about the victim and their family. In this case, I was thinking about both. So it seemed to be a unique case.
It appeared to me from the evidence presented that the following offenses have been committed, and there is sufficient cause to believe the following defendant guilty thereof, to wit, Ricardo Javier Tapia violation.
Rick was charged with murder and attempted murder. The sentence he was facing was life in prison.
I feel hopeless just because nobody knows him. Everybody just sees the crime that he committed.
They don't understand how at all moments they train my fiance to kill, 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 kill. If you ever feel in danger, you go and open fire. And that's exactly what he did. After he came back from war, he still smelled dead bodies. The DA is never gonna understand that. That's like me telling a man labor pains.
You do solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending before this court.
As we got ready to go to trial, we were very confident that the PTSD would not be a legal defense that the jury would accept to excuse Mr. Strouth's liability for murder. Mr. Dodd, we thought, was an important witness to let the jury know what Mr. Strouth was struggling with shortly before and the day of the murder.
Tony was a neighbor. He was across the street and up the hill. On Friday, I knocked at the door, and Tony was out there, and he had a lockable plastic box. And he said, I need you to take this for me and make it disappear. At that time, he said, there's a pistol in the box.
Mr. Dodds, do you recognize the firearm in this display case?
Yes, that was a Walther P99. And he said, "You got to take it." He said, "I'm afraid I'm going to hurt somebody. I'm afraid I'm going to hurt myself."
Do you recall if this Friday is significant?
I believe that's the Friday that the incident happened.
What they wanted to have come out was that Tony returned or gave his gun to Mr. Dodds because he was afraid he was going to kill someone, kill myself. They wanted that so that it was that Tony's homicidal, perhaps suicidal. The time that Tony came over to your house with his gun, you feared for Tony's safety, correct?
Yes. He just had to get that out of his hands. He just did not want that around. He was afraid of it. Because he was afraid he was going to do something with it, and he was afraid he was going to do it to himself. And that's the way I took it, was what he's saying to me is he's afraid he's going to kill himself.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
The DA implied basically someone who's an emotional breakdown on the verge of a homicidal killing spree. I don't think my activity that day would match up to somebody who's a homicidal maniac getting ready to go on a killing spree.
How did you get to know Mr. Strouth back in 2015?
We're down the dock, and I saw him jump in the gate.
Mr. Cheney was one witness of those folks that spent a lot of time down by the harbor and had an interaction with Mr. Strouth where they felt he was dangerous because of the way he was acting and the things that he was saying. I thought the incident with Todd Cheney was a real good predictor of just unexplained violence. And so maybe that was a real snapshot of what really happened in the garage. At any point, did you see a weapon in his possession?
Yes. I gave him a knife, and I thought to myself, this guy's crazy already. I had a feeling he's gonna reach over and slit my throat. He was getting highly agitated. He's getting mad. And he pulls out his knife and goes, how good are your knife fighting skills? I pulled my gun and go, slow down.
So you said something about knife fighting.
Oh.
What did Mr. Strauss say about knife fighting skills?
He pulled his knife, said, how good are your knife fighting skills? I pulled my gun out of my board shorts and go, rock, beat, scissors, motherfucker. Is that too fast for you?
Now, you testified that after you had pulled your gun on my client and told him rock, beats, scissors, motherfucker, you then added a little more, right?
Like what?
Oh, that Brad had said that Tony was crazy. Were you embellishing perhaps today?
Nope.
Nope. No agenda?
No.
No. Yeah, Todd Cheney was to show that here's Tony with his, compulsion to kill, supposedly challenging Todd Cheney to a knife fight. The whole thing was ludicrous.
Dr. Marzouk, do you recognize People's 42?
This is stab wound number 1.
And would you characterize this stab wound as being fatal or non-fatal?
Fatal, because it cut the major artery and major vein to the left lung.
So after my brother was murdered, I made a commitment to be the one to have to go through this. And Brad was 2 years older than me, so I was always trying to tag along with him to be cool, and he had a lot of cute friends, so.
My brother-in-law, when I found out that he was killed by a former Marine, me, myself being a Marine, that was a hard pill to swallow. Knowing what they're capable of, the greatness that Marines are capable of.
I know for a while I was hoping that the coroner would say that fatal blow was instantaneous and that Brad didn't suffer, and unfortunately I got the opposite of that.
So stab wound number 1, which you said was fatal.
Correct.
When that wound happened, that would most likely cause the individual to collapse.
Not immediately until they lose enough blood, so they start getting shock.
So hypothetically,
during the trial, I bounced around in between feeling compassion for this human being, at the same time, hating him. As a Marine wife, I have personal experience with PTSD, with the effects of combat and what it does to somebody.
Hypervigilance I got scared by just the smallest little sounds, and the frustration of not being able to cope or constantly being on edge. That anger builds up.
We became short with each other. We argue quite frequently about stupid stuff, and it was uncomfortable in our house. And I told him, I said, you need to get help.
That anger could be my inabilities to prevent some things that had happened over there. Everyone I know, about a dozen Marines that have been killed, and every single one of them, they were all great human beings. It's amazing how that happens. It's amazing how it's never the shitbag that gets killed in combat.
You can't tell us, obviously, what happened in the garage prior to the stabbing.
No.
Thank you, I have nothing further.
Tony could have been lying in wait. My heart doesn't want to believe that. And I don't know why that is.
VA domiciliary. I've been getting everything from substance abuse recovery to PTSD therapy. I finished the program, the 120 days required by the courts. However, on like day 125 or something, I went AWOL. And was just bouncing around from place to place, basically. You know, another term for that is called couch surfing. During that time, I was still struggling with addiction. You know, I would get a few days, maybe a week or so sober, and then I would relapse every time. When I went AWOL, that also ended my PTSD therapy.
All right, Mark Stillion, DA 445982. I'm a lot disappointed, Mr. Stillion. I'm just concerned that you're self-medicating and you're going to self-medicate yourself right into custody.
That day was a very stressful day for me. The court was on the top of my mind that day. I went into the courtroom a total mind fuck, and I came out a mind fuck, and I'm still mind fucked about it.
Mr. Stillion, you served your country for 4 years. What was your rank when you got out of the Marine Corps?
I was an E5 sergeant, Your Honor.
E5. When did you start using drugs again?
I never used drugs until 6 months after I got back from Afghanistan.
Whole program depends upon truth and trust. Accepting phone calls from guys that you know are going to be using drugs and probably getting you to use drugs is not my idea of a guy who really wants to stay clean. So life is going to change, I hope. Well, Mr. Stillion, you're still keeping contact with your friends, in quotes. So I'm going to order you to give your cell phone to Mr. Antonio and don't ask for it back, okay? Well, I was talking to your lawyer, and he was thinking about letting you visit Ohio. What part of Ohio does your family live in?
Near Akron, Canton. My idea to go home to Ohio. That was my idea. For me to go home to see my family. Because that's a big issue with me, and that's a big part of the reason why I'm unable to get sober right now.
All right, sir. We'll see you back here August 20. You take care of yourself. Good luck.
I'm in the beginning stages of coming off of drugs again. The drug that I'm using, or I was using, was crystal methamphetamine to keep myself up at night because I didn't want to go to sleep. I was at the point where I was waking up screaming, and is PTSD from the incident in Iraq when I killed a bunch of kids? No, that's not PTSD. That's not where my PTSD comes from. Yeah, that is a contributing factor to it, yes. But that's not what, I'm hopeful about it. I'm optimistic about it. It's unfathomable, and it's you know, like, I can't even think right now, hold on. There's this letter that my mom sent me yesterday that she found, my grandma sent me. She wants me to read. I haven't read it yet. My grandmother, she taught me more than anybody ever has before, you know. She passed away a couple years ago. I was not there. I was not conscious to what was happening. I flew home for her funeral, and I was there for a short period of time, and I flew back to LA, and I was arrested a month later. This letter was actually from the letters that were sent to me while I was in Iraq, the first deployment, back in 2007, from my grandmother. She says, "Good morning, Marky. Woke up thinking about you and about this being your birthday. Can't imagine how you will celebrate it or if anyone over there will recognize it and do something special for you. Anyway, here at home we are celebrating the fact that you were born into our family and have become a very special part of our lives. I do hope you have a happy day and that you have received our birthday package that Jeannie and I put together for you. I sure hope you got it." I don't want to read any more of this right now. That's why I want to go home, right there. When I'm around my family, I don't think about drugs or alcohol or anything else. I think about being around my family.
Subsequent to the preliminary hearing, I knew that the defense would be entering a not guilty by reason of insanity plea at that point in time. The next procedure was getting experts appointed.
The court then appointed 2 experts. Both the DA and I had to agree on who those experts were going to be. He made a recommendation, I made a recommendation. I had recommended Dr. Cynthia Boyd. She's the most experienced person that I could find who is knowledgeable in the area of post-traumatic stress disorder from her work with the Department of Defense in San Diego.
I got an email from a defense attorney, Bill Paparian, and on that email, he had included the prosecutor on the case. I was surprised that both attorneys were on the email. That was really puzzling to me. But of course, I was really curious, and I heard Marine and I heard murder, and I thought, I'm in. I learned all about human psyche at 30,000 feet as a flight attendant for American Airlines. That's when I really saw aberrant behavior. I didn't go to college until I was 36 years old. What I do now in my forensic practice is all legal work. When I looked at Rick's records, his military records, his VA interviews, and then I talked to him about it, it all jived. By the time I get to Rick, he is mentally stable. He's taking medication. Rick now has had to come to terms with, my God, I've killed my neighbor.
Dr. Boyd was very professional, and I told her what had gone on, and she was very thorough. I believe she had more knowledge than anybody else that was said to me in regards to PTSD and TBI, and I felt that she was able to fully understand what was going on with me.
The records together, along with police reports and witness interviews and testimony, all showed that he was suffering from a psychotic disorder that was in addition to PTSD. Yeah, I did call you earlier. I'm just concerned about your time frame. Coincidentally, I had a case right on the heels of Rick's that I did not feel supported the insanity defense. I was contacted by Tony's defense attorney, Sloan Ostaby. She told me that she had a Marine who was charged with murder. She believed that he was suffering from some of the effects of combat that had gone unrecognized or undiagnosed.
This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
I think it's difficult for the public to understand. The war hero who put his life on the line to defend his country now comes back and becomes a criminal.
The district attorney implied that I was lying in wait, essentially ambushed my friend. That's so far from the truth.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
It's not predatory aggression. I'm seeing veterans whose aggression is based on defensive aggression, where they overreact to a misperceived situation or cue.
Post-traumatic stress can impact your ability to accurately perceive the amount of danger you're in, and it can also impact your ability to determine how much violence is necessary to protect yourself.
Dr. Boyd, with PTSD, are there particular triggers? Is there a particular sense that's triggered? How does that work?
Depending upon what your trauma was, if you heard gunfire or you heard mortars, then when you hear sounds, like firecrackers or cars backfiring, the body responds with the same response that you had during the traumatic events. Scared, an exaggerated startle response.
Are you familiar with how the Marine Corps trains their service members to deal with combat and stressful situations?
They're trained to be hypervigilant. They're trained to watch entrances and exits. That's what the military has trained them to do.
Find a weapon, find a weapon.
His military training has him conditioned to react first and really ponder second. They did 10 years of that. I think that was as ingrained in his brain as the PTSD was. So we do a good job of training them up, but we don't do a very good job of bringing them back down.
The PTSD basically says the way he's acting is not the behavior of someone who's on the prowl, it's someone who's hypervigilant. So it explained his actions. Do you have an opinion as to whether Mr. Stroud was suffering from PTSD that night in the garage?
Yes, I believe he was.
Thank you. I think, brother.
Dr. Boyd, was there some behavior by Mr. Stroud that was not consistent with PTSD?
No, I really thought it was the PTSD profile that was just out of control.
Did you?
In Dr. Boyd's report, she summarized Mr. Stroud's version of how the crime went down, and it was a self-defense version. But we went further than that, and we subpoenaed her notes.
And when you interviewed him the second
And it's not until you actually look at those notes and get those details that you start seeing there are inconsistencies. The story has changed.
The first time that you spoke to him, he was very specific with respect to where Bradley Garner grabbed him.
Let me see. Trauma memories are not encoded as clearly as non-trauma memories. We call it islands of memory that generally hang together to show the big picture, but not necessarily the specific details. He reached for me and grabbed my shirt.
Did he change that fact when you interviewed him again the second time about the crime?
Only slightly. He said he jumped up and grabbed me with left hand by the neck.
Isn't it true, doctor, that you only included the last and most recent version of his description of the crime?
Could be, because they were both very close.
How do you do your job? Do you inquire to see if there's some, perhaps, malingering?
I believed that the stories were close enough that there was no malingering.
You can't just tell the basic story, but the nitty-gritty details are important and they'll be scrutinized.
Thank you, doctor.
From a defense point of view, it's very difficult raising mental health because there's sort of a feeling that people are then, quote, getting away with things. And it's unfortunate because his PTSD was a direct result from his service to this country.
He's a great Marine.
Have you ever known him to be violent?
I have not.
Ever see him to be aggressive?
No.
Did you ever see him angry?
Never.
Did you ever see him lash out?
Did not.
There is an emotional need to find someone or something to blame when something terrible happens. In the case of combat veterans, it can often be hard to find the bad guy. In those cases, I guess, the bad guy is war. War devastates those that are involved in it, and even righteous wars devastate good people.
What about the bus driver? She leaves?
Door snaps?
It closes when it snaps. It closes, yeah. Okay, so the children are in line.
We just never expected it. This is not what we wanted. We had no control over it. I ended up being a single parent with both my children.
Oh, the doctor doesn't go to school? Okay.
There's still something I gotta fight for. I do have something that I look forward to. I have someone out there, and I have, my loved ones that are out there that are waiting for me. They want me back.
I told myself the moment that I became in a relationship with him, I was going to be able to deal with not seeing him or talking to him periods of time. Because he's in the military. But my kids need to see, their dad. That's the only thing that is keeping him alive in there. He doesn't have anything else.
Where are you gonna take it?
To Rises Park.
to Jurassic Park.
That's Jurassic Park? Oh
The
no.
T-Rex not gonna eat the people.
Me and my daughter, in order to go see him, we have to leave 2 hours and 30 minutes prior to visitation. Because it does take us an hour and 30 minutes to get there, and we have to be there an hour before to check in. But I don't care. I will still drive an hour and 30 minutes to see him 30 minutes.
When I was 2, my papa went to the military. And it takes a long time to get out of the military. We get to see him and say goodbye. We just go there, and when we saw him, it was raining outside.
Tony was going to testify. He needed to. And I knew it would be a little difficult because he would be very concerned on the stand and it would be hard for him to loosen up. But Tony's one of the few people that I've ever met that will tell you exactly what he thinks without any sort of filtering to make himself not look bad. So I thought there was such a genuineness of him. I didn't think I had anything to lose. Your Honor, at this time, you can call David Anthony Stroud.
Raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give...
Did the PTSD cause him to have this emotional break? I don't think we'll ever know the reason why. I don't even know if he knows the reason why.
A horrific thing happened that night. But I don't think they were both just physically there looking at each other as me and you are saying, hey, let's get in a fight and kill each other, or hurt each other. I don't think that happened. And I'm not for sure that either one of them were aware of what was going on.
Sometime in the middle of April 2015, did you go to the VA for assistance?
Yes, I did.
Why was that?
I started realizing, that I was having some problems. I had problems sleeping, bad dreams, nightmares and stuff for years.
He didn't look healthy. He didn't look good when he came home. He wasn't the same child. I mean, he wasn't the same Tony. He was very emotional, and he's not an emotional person. I mean, he cried over stuff, and that just wasn't like him.
I was just so programmed to just continue charging the hill, suck it up. This is what Marines do. And unfortunately, I probably was dealing with stuff. It really just.
I just didn't see it. I was having some problems.
Perhaps if he had been more committed to receiving that treatment earlier, perhaps we wouldn't be in this situation.
When you came back from your last deployment,
He had a choice. He had a responsibility. His family had a responsibility. How could his mother sit in that courtroom knowing that there are signs?
And I asked him, do you think that, do you really think it could be PTSD? And he really didn't want to discuss that. He really felt that if he was labeled as that would have an effect if he moved back to Roanoke, for him to be able to have interactions with his son.
There's such a stigma attached to reporting your trauma. For me, I didn't talk about anything that bothered me in my service for over 10 years.
at some point in time that afternoon or evening of April 24th, did you return back to the house on Santa Rosa?
Yeah, later that evening we did.
And by we, we're talking about you
Me and Mr.
Brian?
Gardner, yes.
You two hadn't had any words? You weren't in a fight with Mr. Gardner at this time?
No, we weren't engaged in any conversation whatsoever.
Did you hear anything unusual?
Brad was sitting there, and he was breathing like a. That's when I noticed that he was holding the K-bar knife.
Is this your K-bar knife?
It is.
And did you hear any unusual sound after that?
Just a very loud, crashing sound from his direction. Yes.
And then what happened?
He grabbed me by the throat.
What did you do?
I was able to get the knife from him, gaining positive control of the knife.
And what did you do once you had control of that knife?
I used it.
Once he was down, did you stab him anymore?
No, I did not. I remember being very disoriented. I remember realizing what had happened. I crouched down I seen a ton of blood, and I crashed down to Brad, and he was gone.
Why did you start to hack away at yourself?
I just killed my friend. I don't even know why.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Good afternoon, Mr. Stroud. Were you feeling dangerous in the days leading up to Brad's stabbing?
I don't understand what you mean by dangerous. If I was feeling dangerous.
Mr. Stroud, there came a point when you were in the garage on April the 24th with your friend Bradley Garner where you took positive control of that knife. True?
Yes, sir.
Bradley Garner was unarmed at that point. True?
Yes, I disarmed him. That's correct.
And you realize that you're at a more advantageous position than him because you have the weapon and he has no weapon.
It all happened so fast. It was all a combination of training, instinctual response to a threatening situation, and I didn't play by play any thoughts as you were indicating.
You're trained to kill?
I am.
When you're aiming this blade of this K-bar knife towards the center mass of your friend, are you trying to kill him at that point?
This is muscle memory. And the purpose of training in the military under these circumstances, muscle memory is so when the time comes, your body knows how and what to do and does it without you, exactly what you're implying that I did, and think step by step what I should do. That is the bread and butter of what we learn in the advanced training and the training that I received in the United States Marine Corps.
Unfortunately for Tony, Tony is a very honest man, and he couldn't give the jurors a motive. He wouldn't give the jurors a motive. And I think the jurors needed a reason. And without one,
we're left with nothing here. Why did he attack me, or why did I allegedly attack him for no reason? Me reacting this way was not unreasonable for someone who had been through some things in their life. Like combat, it's hard to identify with for a lot of people because why do such strong individuals man or woman crumble.
It is very unfortunate that we send soldiers off to war and they break. This man broke. And I wish he had.
And sentencing, most of all. If the defense can show that the criminal behavior was a direct result of untreated combat trauma related to that military service, I think that should be recognized.
My name is Brenda Garner. As the wife of a 24-year Marine Corps veteran, we are ashamed of you. Brad was the best of the world.
PTSD perhaps could be a defense under certain circumstances, but when someone is convicted of the crime of murder, then the consequence should be what anyone convicted of murder has to experience or suffer.
Our hearts are broken, and I pray that one day it may be healed.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you for being here this afternoon. So now it comes time for the court to sentence the defendant. Defendant is committed to the California Department of Corrections, 15 years to life as regards the second-degree murder conviction.
I have a client here who served his country honorably for 10 years, who has a mental health issue because of his service, and he's getting sentenced and will get the same amount of time as someone who gets into a disagreement with someone and thinks, this guy's an asshole, and picks up a knife and stabs him 10 times.
Take a recess.
I just had such strong conviction that the truth would, and I didn't mean let me walk out the door today, set me free, but the truth that I didn't murder Brad Garner, I thought that would come out. I'm the man who will take ownership for responsibility of what happened that night. I may have killed a man that night, but I'm not a murderer.
Up until recently, a couple months ago, I was still struggling the entire time to get sober. 54 days sober today, so it's a much different headspace than I was then. My PTSD is wearing away, you know. My nightmares have been reduced. My anxiety levels, you know, I can ride a bus again, you know, I can do certain things which weren't possible before.
I hope you also understand that this whole program depends upon truth and trust. You sound like a very truthful guy.
So Judge Tynan, I feel like I'm forever indebted to him because, you know, if it wasn't for him and for the Veterans Court program, I would not be here today. I would definitely be either, you know, dead or in jail.
All right, Mark Stillion, VA 44.
I'm currently working on accepting the things that I've done and committing to move past those things. That's something I'm working on right now.
Do we have a report? Yes, we do. Mr. Antonio. Good morning, Mr. Stillion.
With the Veterans Court, I think the success rate compared to the non-veteran case is tremendous. They seem to take the treatment better.
I like the idea of not trying to solve a problem by putting someone in jail or in prison, but by dealing with their issues. In the beginning, when Veterans Court was just forming, we were looking at going from a 75% recidivism rate for defendants who went to state prison and were released to an 18% recidivism rate after they graduated from Veterans Court.
Very nice report. Mr. Antonio, do you know anything about this admission to the DOM?
Yes, Your Honor. He had a screening. He went through his social worker at the Westlake VA, had them put it in immediately. So
If I were to say one thing to my family, I would just say thank you, especially my mom. My mom is like, my mom has always been my biggest supporter, and she's never turned her back on me. And I wish I could say sorry in a way that would express how I truly feel, but it's just not possible.
Okay, I'll see you back here on January 7th. Stay in contact with Mr. Antonio, and we'll see you back there on that date. Good luck to you. Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Okay, why don't the graduates come up and sit in the front row here and get comfortable? You guys are here to graduate. You came in here, you did what you
The people we're talking about are heroes.
and then some, and I am very pleased to be in the same room with you. All right, let's get started.
They come home full of potential to become not just assets, but super assets in our society and our communities at a time when we really need them and their life experience.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir, for promising to work hard. That's all I ask. All right, sir.
Justice dictates and public safety dictates that that person be left back in the community better than the criminal justice system found them. Therapeutic justice is good for all of us.
I don't want to be remembered for the things that I've done in these past 5 years. I want to be somebody who's remembered for the things that I do the next 25, 30 years. So that's my goal. Yeah.
Calling number 2 on calendar, People versus Ricardo Tapia. The defendant pled guilty to count 1, murder, and to count 2, attempted willful.
The case was going to be adjudicated in front of Judge Spear, one way or the other. It was agreed that she would make the determination of his sanity based upon the doctor's reports.
Coming forward with an insanity defense, it's a mountain that defense attorneys climb.
Do either counsel have any additional witnesses or evidence that they wish to present?
Your Honor, Dr. Boyd in her evaluation wrote, quote, "At the time of the offense, Mr. Tapia's behavior..."
Rick did not believe that what he was doing was morally or legally wrong. He believed that he was killing to protect his family under the orders of the president. It's the combination of PTSD and a psychotic disorder together created a very tragic event.
There's a quote in Latin, "Nemo residio, leave no one behind." This sacred promise of the American military that we will leave no one behind. Ricardo Tapia was left behind. His mind was left on the battlefield in Fallujah. Your Honor, I believe that my client should be found not guilty by reason of insanity. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. People have any rebuttal evidence that they wish to present?
Your Honor, briefly to put things in perspective. In a case like this, you want to be sensitive to the victims and to what they've gone through. I know for myself that if my family was going through this, I would find it particularly unsettling for a prosecutor to tell me, well, they're technically guilty of the crime they committed, but they're really not responsible for what they did, and they're not going to go to prison. While the defendant's military career is to be congratulated and honored, he chose to hide what was happening to him from the facilities that could in fact treat him. Ultimately, the reason we're here is because of choices the defendant made.
It was denial, not wanting to admit that I had it, and it would have affected my career if they would have known that I had PTSD. Knowing that kind of prevents one to open up about it and discuss what's going on.
Your Honor, while I have some reservations about conceding the sanity, I can't in good faith discount the reports.
Okay. All 3 experts concluded that the defendant really believed he was killing enemy combatants and incapable of distinguishing right from wrong at that moment. Therefore, the court finds that he was legally insane when he committed the crime.
Rick was found not guilty by reason of insanity. He was ordered to be transferred from the LA County Jail to the State Mental Hospital at Patton.
For a minimum of 180 days.
No, I'm really sad. And I feel for all the victims of this.
I would like to send my condolences and let them know that it was not something that was ever intended. It was not something that was forethought. I would ask him for forgiveness.
I think the appropriate outcome did happen based upon the facts. The justice system worked in this instance. Is it a satisfying result? No.
At first I was in disbelief, and then after, I was just extremely happy. I don't know how many other battles I'm gonna have to fight in life, but this one, I felt like we won.
It's difficult to celebrate in the midst of a tragedy, but there was a sense of achievement that we had completed the mission. The mission had been accomplished.
Rick's sentence at Patton is to be determined. There have been cases where people have served more time in a mental facility than they would have had they gone to prison.
So every 6 months, we return to court in front of Judge Spear for a report whether or not Rick meets the criteria for discharge from Patton State Hospital.
When someone is found not guilty by reason of mental illness, they are committed to a state psychiatric facility rather than to prison. And it's an open-ended commitment. It could be for the rest of their life.
The Rick Tapia case was the case that haunted me, that will always haunt me, because it was a tragedy that could have been avoided. This case should never have happened.
Our military take an oath to serve. And I think we should take an oath to serve them.
Happy Veterans Day, everybody! Happy Veterans Day!
I think at this stage of the game, the way that PTSD is being addressed is a handicap for the defendant. It has to evolve. Then the military is going to have to do more on the back end. Instead of asking if they have PTSD, perhaps the assumption should be that they do.
It needs to be built in that there's an anticipation that boot camp will be 6 weeks and post boot camp will be another 6 weeks. Let's come back down to who we were before we went there.
We have always had this instilled sense that we will never leave a fallen comrade behind. But once they get home, if their invisible injuries lead them to fall, we're all too ready to turn our backs on them and walk away. And I think that's just as shameful as if we turned our backs and walked away from them on the battlefield.
It's the opinion of the people at Patton State Hospital that Rick is not yet ready for community outpatient treatment. There is a checklist that they actually have at Patton, and you can see in the last year that Rick has been there that slowly but surely he is fulfilling each of those requirements. Perhaps when we return to court next year, Rick will have met the criteria for discharge from Patton State Hospital. You learn to be patient when you've been practicing law as long as I have, and you understand that this isn't a race, it's a marathon, and these things take time.
It's hard sometimes, but I have to put my boots on, suit up, and show up. And so just knowing that I'm trying to get out of here gives me hope that I could potentially get out of here. It gives me a sense of motivation to get out and get back to my kids.
I like spicy.
We pretty much try to keep each other strong. Just being patient, that's what it is.
My dad is calling, so I called him.
Oh, your dad's calling? Okay.
What, Papa? We're gonna eat dinner and then go on a bike ride. We can make some for you. Okay. I love you, Papa.
Love you too, my sunshine. You have a good night, okay, baby?
Good night. Bye.
Rick. So you want to call me later?
Yeah, I'm gonna call you later. I just wanna call and tell the kids good night because I know they're gonna sleep by the time I come back.
Okay. We love you.
Kiss my kids on the forehead for me. Tell them I love them.
Okay, I will.
Tell Papa something.
Good night. Okay, we eat all our food. We can go do something. You want to go to the park?
This is CNN Breaking News.
We've been following breaking news in Thousand Oaks this morning where a gunman stormed a bar and opened fire, killing
Identified as 28-year-old Ian David Long. The United States Marine Corps vet served as a machine gunner.
He was a decorated service member.
Saw combat, possible PTSD.
He was dealing with PTSD.
A normal guy, a guy who went to serve his country. It changed after returning from at least one tour of duty. He had trouble sleeping. He had some nightmares, anxiety.
Given that background, could more, you think, certainly with hindsight, we're also more have been done to stop him?
The mornings they keep coming, like a freight train rolling through his head. Sometimes torn and sometimes running from the stories that he's left unsaid. He's not the same child, those days are gone. His road is worn and grown wild, but he paved it on his own. Nobody really knows what the world is gonna throw your way. Only time will say. Seen him swim against the tide, seen him dream, I've seen him fly, and then fall back to earth again. And so the river flows, so the river flows, so the river flows. Wherever it goes, nobody knows. There's darkness in the edges and light expects. Wanna meet him where his head is. Wanna hold him, let him catch his breath. He is not the same child. Those days are gone. He's walked alone a long while, wondering where he belongs. Nobody really knows what the world is gonna throw your way. Only time will say. Seen him swim against the tide, seen him dream, I've seen him fly, and then fall back to earth again. And so the river flows, so